You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, we have been talking about starting a podcast for a long time, and I'm excited. Today is our first episode. We've done all the setup things. We bought all of our Amazon microphones and lights, and we're here.
We're here.
Okay, well, let's hope our sound works this time.
Fingers crossed.
Well, I'm Kelsey Beach,
And I'm David Beach.
and this is the Joint Account Podcast. Dave and I are both business professionals at different points in our career in kind of the financial, accounting, technology sectors. And we've just been talking about how do we build our careers? How do we ensure we can retire comfortably? How do we plan for the future? And especially all of that in light of the AI world that we're living in now.
Yeah, I think we have so many interesting dinner table conversations, and I think the thought is that this podcast would be people can be a fly on the wall of our dinner conversations, where we're going to muse on all things careers, tech, retirement. What does the future of work look like? For context, I'm on the kind of not elder millennial, but kind of solidly middle millennial, and Kelsey is elder Z. I think is the way you kids call it now.
The kids. Okay. Okay, Dave. Yeah, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and just where you're at in your career and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so I am a certified public accountant, a CPA, and started my career in 2012, 2013, sometime around there, and did 7 years in public in a top 300 regional firm. Learned a lot, kind of cut my teeth in accounting services and primarily tax, doing a bunch of different things. Kind of learning the way that what I would call I hate to use the word legacy firm, but like a legacy accounting firm that does tax audits and maybe a small handful of special services, and worked in that firm for about 7 years. Rose through the ranks, thought that I was kind of on the partner track, and then in 2019 had a really interesting opportunity to go join a local startup that had just raised their Series B, and took a what I thought was a sales tax role with them. And then over 5 years, that had kind of turned into a director of tax role, where I got to go from Series B all the way up through Series E. And very recently, that company just IPO'd on the NASDAQ. So that is exciting. And towards the end of my time there, I was learning all kinds of things around how to do tax work better, faster, more efficiently, because we had a small limited team. And after that, did another brief rotation in public accounting for about a year, and then just decided, no, it's time to start my own firm. It's time to go out on my own. So I launched my practice, Beach CPA, in October of 2025, and the rest is history. So that's kind of where I am today.
It's so funny too because I think you had always been trending toward this spot. Like you always knew you're underrating yourself. Like you're very technical, so you wrote Python. And guys, this is before ChatGPT and AI. Dave taught himself Python and SQL to build automations and like custom automations for his role at the startup, and that was really big for you. And so I feel like you were always headed toward this point of I'm going to create this like boutique tax accounting firm that's going to do things differently and kind of incorporate technology into that expertise.
That's right. And COVID was a weird time for all of us. So when I was in lockdown, at midnight, because I had nothing better to do, it's like, oh, I might as well learn some Python. And really the impetus for that was, I was working on a team that had basically built their own ERP, and I was at the I guess, the whim of the developers and the financial analyst team to get me information I needed. I couldn't just export that information from like a CRM or ERP or anything. So to interact with that, I kind of had to learn these things. And then once you get that skill, you're like, man, there's so many things that I used to do manually. Let me automate all the things. So I describe myself a little bit as an automation evangelist.
Yeah, of course. And I think you and I tend to bond over that too. Not
We
to brag.
we definitely go there now about that. But why
Yeah.
don't you tell the people a little bit about your background, your career?
Yeah. So I'm like in the end stage of my early career. Would you say that's fair?
I might, I might agree mostly with that. But I also am here to live it.
I feel like I've been working forever. It just keeps going. So I spent my early career in wealth management. I worked at two wealth management firms, each basically mirrored the experience of the other. And like I started as like an operations person that eventually morphed at both into a compliance officer role. And everything that I've ended up doing, like if I'm going to draw one common thread, generally I want to work with a leader that's going places who wants to do big things and doesn't want to keep the business stagnant. Like, I love growth. It's really exciting. And it's exciting to try to figure out where the business is going and how it's going to grow and how we're going to meet capacity demands or how we're going to bring on more revenue and all those different challenges that come with building a business. And so it's funny because we talk about automation. I remember in 2019 Googling and like doing all this research on how to build an Excel macro to fill a bunch of PDFs from different rows of a spreadsheet. And when I got it to work, it was like the closest thing to magic I'd ever seen.
Macros are a gateway drug.
It was crazy. And I wish that someone had like told me sooner. Otherwise, I could have like invested into that skill set more. But it's so funny because I never could have imagined the things that we do now, like interacting with an API. I thought I would never like programmatically interact with an API, but vibe coding, it kind of gets a bad rap. It enables me, a non-technical person, to do things that I never could do like that on my own. So
Yeah.
it's amazing. Yeah.
It's crazy because like, you can just go to ChatGPT and say, write me a Python script to output PDFs from an Excel file. You don't even have to do macros anymore. And like macros get a bad rap for a variety of reasons. But yeah, it's super empowering this place that we are in technology and work because what you used to have to beg, ask, plead with IT or an analyst, right, to write you a custom report. Now you can just connect to the data or the tools and do it yourself. And I think that's so empowering for people who have always wanted to be able to do more and are just limited by their environment or their skill set.
Yeah. Like it's just that was a huge unlock. But now explaining my career kind of sounds like your career. I work in traditional wealth management or accounting firm, moved to tech company at a Series B point. So after I left wealth management, I had an awesome opportunity to go be an executive assistant for a local Series B health payment company. And it was a growth stage company, still is. And I had this really cool opportunity to just be in the room and learn from some really incredible leaders who are building this company that it's still growing and it's figuring out the perfect product market fit and like the best utilization for its solution. And I got to be around a lot of people that just were very driven and it was really a meritocracy. So that's one thing I really appreciated about working there and some of the other places I've been. It doesn't matter if you grind for a long time or work super hard, results speak for themselves, and no one cared what your background was. Can you do the job? Are you making an impact? Do you want to do more? And I really loved that environment of just people who are working to solve a problem, seeing other problem solvers and giving that opportunity. So I was really grateful for that time there. And I think too, like one thing you and I haven't talked about so much, I think working in a company with product and engineering teams was a little bit of this mindset shift because it's so different than like working in a random services firm, right? Like I think that was different for you and I, and it really illuminated some of the challenges of working with a product and engineering team, but also the incredible benefits that you have of knowing people with that expertise as software engineers and product people that can take these ideas and translate it into, hey, what do we need to build, right? And I think you and I tend to think about things in that way now. Would you agree?
I think so. I think I don't necessarily think that the way product is done at scale in enterprises is the right way to do it. We could go on an entire rant episode. I'm famously anti-Scrum and anti-Agile. And, I think that's an interesting place now because what we can do with the tools that are available to us make it so that we don't have to wait for a sprint to create a custom a custom little local file that allows me to work 5x, 10x, 12x faster. Um, so I think, if I was going to go deploy something at scale, sure, maybe we do it the old way. But I think it has unlocked a new kind of thinking
Yeah.
for both of us,
Yeah.
which has been, I think, good for both of us in our career.
For sure, for sure. But to kind of wrap this up, like now I work at a private equity owned and incubated executive recruiting firm, and it's a small team. It's a team of 10, but we have more business than we know what to do with. And they're at this like 0 to 1 inflection point where they're growing the team. They're like, this works. This is a proven business model and like process that we have. How do we grow it? So I have this really cool role there where I get to bring things like this. I get to be a proud vibe coder every day and put together automations and try to help the team do more with less without sacrificing quality. And so it's cool to have worked in a really large organization and then come back to something smaller. And it's like the problems are totally opposite in those different environments, but it's cool to take pieces of each and kind of apply them to one another. So that's kind of where I am, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what we've been doing this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us.
Sure. So, for those who are local here in Missouri, this is, what is it, April 18th?
Or yeah.
Something April, the weekend after the tax deadline. But it is the annual Mid-Missouri Startup Weekend. So shout out to Redbud and Veterans United and a whole host of other sponsors, Amaron Software, uh, because this is one of the, I think one of the most favorite, I think this is one of the favorite events in Columbia. Smaller niche thing. It's not like Roots and Blues, but Startup Weekend, for those who don't know, is a weekend where you could call it hackathon, you could call it, I don't know what else you would call it, but it's a yeah, it's a pitch competition, a little bit Shark Tank, a little bit like just get together for a weekend and teams form around ideas. People then take the next 48 hours to validate the idea, build the ideas, and Columbia is famous for turning out two unicorns out of their Startup Weekend ecosystem. And so, shout out to Redbud for bringing it back after it was gone for a few years. And we're just really thankful to everyone who helps make it possible because it's one of the coolest events that I think we do.
Yeah. Like
You know,
we as in you and me.
we as in you and me, but also we as Columbia, Missouri,
Yeah.
because every year that I have been lucky enough to go, I learn something new.
Yeah.
And I always tell people there's people that are way smarter than me that go to these things, and I'm a sponge and try to just soak up as much as I can. So, uh, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and also for context, like this is my fourth year in a row at Startup Weekend, and this is your ninth Startup Weekend, maybe not consecutive.
not consecutive.
Yeah.
Yes. But my very first startup weekend was the year that Equipment Share pitched what at the time was Airbnb for construction equipment. So I've gotten to see, it's been cool to be a fly on the wall because in 2012, 2013, 2014, like everything was a SaaS app. I don't know which year Zapier won. It was before 2014, but not too many years, might be 11 or 12. But yeah, everything was a SaaS app. And then in the mid 2015, 2016, it was like, oh, we got some blockchain. We had some machine learning, which is a precursor, obviously, to AI, everything. And now, what used to take teams an entire weekend to do, build a landing page, build some minimum functionality, they're like, okay, there's no excuse for not having an MVP that's functional for the judges because you have all these tools available now. So we're seeing a huge shift in both the expectations for deliverables for the weekend are higher than they've ever been, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I think it begs the question of in Startup Weekend, how are you competitive and how do you win? And then the bigger concentric circle around that is if you're raising capital, what differentiates you at this point? Like we heard 72 pitches last night, 72 1 minute long pitches, and nearly every one of them used the word AI. And I find that so interesting because, of course, you're using AI. Like, I'm not gonna say, oh, I use the internet in my product. Like, of course I do. Like, that's not, it's
I'm gonna
implied.
put Microsoft Excel on my resume.
Yeah, oh my gosh, we know you can use it. And so I just think it's this funny point where how do you differentiate yourself? Like, yes, if I can deploy something during the weekend, generate revenue, that's compelling. But what if you're working on a product that works with like a legacy, like mature industry that's slow moving? Like the team that I joined this weekend is working on a banking product, and another team has an insurance product. Well, they're not gonna deploy their product within a real company and a real business like that this weekend because it hasn't gone through security checks, it hasn't gone through a compliance review. So if I'm one of those businesses, how do you win? Like, what do you think about that?
I don't think that anybody building this weekend, let's put it this way, 72 ideas or something like that were pitched last night. There were very few ideas that I heard that I haven't heard before or haven't heard in a slightly different flavor. But I think AI is now resetting what the standard for the mousetrap is, right? Like everyone is building a better mousetrap, a better tool to do. I don't know what some of the ideas I could leverage, but I think products and tools and systems that relied on some degree of human autonomy is now being replaced with better mousetraps, more efficient mousetraps. And so I think a lot of people are just building better mousetraps this weekend. And so you don't necessarily need to go sell to a bank this weekend. You just need to demonstrate that using your tool, you can accomplish something that 3 or 4 full-time bankers used to do. And if you can do that, then you have now figured out, an offering that can win.
You know, it kind of occurred to me while we were talking about that. So this last week, my team and I, we had like this on-site and we did what's called a Kaizen, which is like this lean Six Sigma like little event that you have with your team where you identify and eliminate different types of waste in your organization. And like it's just this is another framework. It's like an agile or a scrum, whatever. Like we're gonna use this framework to stay organized as a team and try to make ourselves better. And so it was really fun. And everyone kind of took turns in figuring out like this is a waste. The type of waste, like there's 6 types of wastes. It's like duplication of work, or I don't know. I would need to look it up and put it in the show notes. But you would name the waste, you would identify a solution for it, and work with the team to eliminate that. And so I think what you just described, like you're right. We heard a lot of things that rhyme with other ideas last night in the pitches and that we've heard before. But at the core, I think some of the most valuable ideas, and I think some of the low-hanging fruit ways that AI will be implemented in the coming years is to eliminate waste. Like waste in, oh, it takes too much time to enroll in a getting an SBA loan. Oh, why is it so complicated to gather all these documents? How do I eliminate the time it takes to gather those documents? Do I already have those documents? Can AI pull it together for me? Like, I find that really interesting. And thinking about all the pitches that I think will do the best, I feel like they kind of center around that right now, you know? And that's not necessarily, I'm going to replace human beings in a job. It's, I'm going to take away the kind of parts of the job that are really difficult for no reason, you know?
Yeah, I think that's true. I do think there's this weird question right now of what is waste? What would you define as waste? And if something today isn't defined as waste, but is defined as something where efficiency can be introduced, capitalism states that you're probably going to lean into that. And so, and we could go into a whole different podcast about the lies we were told about technology in our careers. One in particular that sticks with me is I remember back in 2018 or 19 when I was in public accounting and we were afraid of the SaaSification of a lot of things that had traditionally been done by accountants. And my managing partner said to me, don't worry, we're all going to upskill and it's going to have some impact, but we're all going to, serve in higher value areas. We're all going to make consultants. And I think that's one of those scary areas right now where it's like, okay, maybe. I hope so. But also, like, in this era where knowledge is no longer a differentiator,
Well,
is your place actually learning, is it more valuable for people who are afraid of either being labeled as waste or a redundancy
Mm.
or an inefficiency to learn uh, these AI platforms and these skills and to become an implementation uh,
I'm gonna
center? I don't know.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that because I think that's a really good segue. I was gonna ask you about your week because you finished tax day. Woo! Another tax season. Our marriage has
Yeah.
made it through.
Shout out to all of the accounting and tax professionals. Happy April 15th, wherever you are. And may the next April 15th be better than the last.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I feel like it definitely has been for you. But I was gonna ask you about your, what did we say? It's a $28 audit that you had this last week.
Yes.
Tell me about that because I think that definitely factors into the elimination of waste.
Yeah, and it's not even waste. I wouldn't label it as waste, but to give
Mm,
everyone some context. So I was working with a client on an indirect tax, otherwise known as sales and use tax matter, and I won't get into the specifics about who they are or what they do, but uh, this is a very common area for big consulting firms to come in and do these big studies, and they might charge 30, 50, $100,000 to come in and basically do an audit before a government comes in. And they might identify an exposure area or they might identify a refund that you're owed. And so it's working to kind of do this analysis for this client. And this is not a small business. This is a business that has their own internal accounting department. And so, the volume of transactions is high. It's not like 100 transactions a month, it's like 100,000 transactions a month. So, something that would take a human a ton of time to just process through data. And I took a AI, I think we were using Gemini,
mhm.
and I won't bore people with the actual technical implementation of it, but I was able to use an AI to extract information from the invoices that were necessary that we didn't have to populate this data frame, this Excel file, for lack of a better phrase, and did it for, I think it was 1,400 invoices. And it took an hour or two to run. Um, but the cost of the tokens that we spent on the AI was $28. And I think about the way that legacy firms have done that service where they just hire staff ones, staff twos, maybe some overseas labor to kind of do the bulk processing. And how many hours of minimum wage it would take, or even first, staff one level salary to process that same volume of transactions. It's not even a question of whether or not AI will impact the future. Um, yeah, I would say it's already here.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting is the prompt that I used was, hey, take the role of a sales and use tax analyst, extract these 10 fields off of the invoice, and if the information is not there, don't hallucinate it. Here's how to handle conflicting pieces of information. And it gave me back a perfect Excel file.
So what is a junior analyst that would have been doing that before going to do now?
And I think that is the question because are they going to, as the partner in the firm that I was at before, are they going to become a consultant now? How do they learn even where,
Well, yeah.
how do they learn those primary skills, those first level skills in order to then move up? I don't know. I think that's
Yeah.
people are saying AI is not eliminating jobs yet. That may be technically true, but I think practically speaking, we should have a more nuanced view because it's definitely not something I'm going to hire for
Mm.
a human to scrape through 1,400 invoices.
So expanding on that, like there's this divide, and like we've talked about this for a long time now. If I was graduating college right now, I would probably not be investing in my knowledge of whatever my chosen field is. I don't think that's the most valuable way they can spend their time. And I don't necessarily know if that's what colleges are teaching students. I'm sure some programs may be, but how would you, if you were 22, whatever, graduating, be entering the workforce knowing what you know now? Because you probably don't have a big background in data science. And I would argue you basically like a new 21st century skill that's really relevant to business is having a basic grasp of this technological like literacy.
I think to use a parallel, you know, there have been a lot of conversation about should we make personal finance like a
Mm.
required course in high school or in college? And I think in the same way where IT basic um, digital skills, if we want to call them that, were optional for the most part in college or education in general. I think to be successful in the future, you're going to have to operate at this level of skills. It's like I don't, and this is kind of a joke, but like accountants anymore better not be putting Microsoft Excel on their resume as a skill.
Yeah, this is an expectation.
These are table stakes. They've been table stakes for the better part of 20 years.
Yeah.
And right now, being fluent in AI is a nice to have, but eventually it will become table stakes.
Well, and what's interesting about that is if I'm an employer, I'm assuming that in some way, shape, or form, I'm going to empower my people by getting them a Claude, Chat, whatever subscription. And so I'm paying for tokens of some kind. Who is going to be more valuable to me? Someone that can complete Project ABC in half the tokens, or someone that is going to take a couple hours, even with Claude or whatever, to complete the same project? I think this ability to, excuse me, to be efficient with tokens, especially as the concern over will these be more expensive? Is this going to be a premium product? How will AI be priced in the future? I think that's the skill set. Like, who can write the best instructions?
I think that's right. And I think we could talk ad nauseum about like the fact that no one has actually figured out how to effectively monetize the AI revolution except maybe NVIDIA at this point. Anthropic and I'll cite a little stat that I thought was humorous earlier this week where for every $200 Mac subscription plan that Claude has, they're losing something like $5,000 or $10,000 on those because they're high throughput users, they're high demand users. But I do think, obviously, we're at this point where the technology is not just going to stop being available, and so I think there's a future where instead of a $200 a month subscription, it might be a $5,000 a month subscription. But even at that crazy delta of markup, I think what you and I are describing is that we can get so much value out of that compared to what it would take for me to hire somebody to do the kind of analysis I was talking about,
Yeah.
$60,000 a year starting salary or something like that, which is below what the average accounting starting salary is in some places. But like, if I can do it faster, even if the quality is the same, if I can do it faster with an AI, it might be worth a 5,000 subscription. So
Right.
is the future knowledge worker more valuable because they have AI experience and domain expertise?
Mm.
I think the premise is that knowledge is no longer a differentiator.
Yeah, like knowledge work may get a new name of some kind, like prompt work. But what's funny to me about that, like, let's take that a step further. So that kind of implies that a mom and pop business or like a not super high revenue generating business will probably not be able to afford a tool like that. Like, I kind of compare it to like a Bloomberg terminal. Like, you're getting the best financial data you can, and for a business that needs it, that's really valuable. But you also now need someone to operate the Bloomberg terminal that costs $20,000 a year, whatever it is. So will AI be kind of like that, where for the businesses that can afford it and know it will be a competitive advantage, you now need an operator of this thing that previously everyone was like, oh, I know how to use ChatGPT, obviously, because it's got a really easy to use interface, but who can write the best prompts? And actually, how do you interview people to demonstrate? How do you make sure they can demonstrate their knowledge?
Yeah,
Think about
well,
that.
and I would love for you to expand on that a little bit because in one of our earlier conversations this week, you know, especially, I think we are in a little bit of an echo chamber. We're on the first part of our career, we are surrounded by people who are tech forward. I think we think some of this is table stakes, but I do think there's a huge segment of small businesses, middle market, um, you know, businesses that are transitioning from maybe a parent to a child or other
Mm.
operator who haven't figured out how to leverage these tools yet. So how can you even demonstrate your skill set with it? And I think
Yeah.
you had an interesting thought of like, okay, how can you test people's knowledge with this?
Like, yeah, I remember we were on our walk when we were talking about this. I mean, if it were me, and I'm sure there are better ways to do this, but if I was interviewing someone for this technical type of role, it's a non-technical technical role. Like I expect the output to be technical, but I don't expect you to be technical. So it's this kind of weird hybrid role. But if I was on a Zoom call or sitting with a candidate who would be interviewing for this role, I would probably have them open up their AI of choice and show me what they would do for a prompt. Because we're getting to this point where I'm sure everyone sees the echo chamber of LinkedIn talking about, oh, well, we could use Cloud for this and Cloud for that, co-work this and co-work that. And not everyone is using it at the super high level. Anyone can use it, which is great because it's incredibly accessible and it's putting tools in the hands of people that may have never been able to enter this space before. But how are we measuring quality? Like, I got an email earlier this week, and I get Slacks all the time, like that have tons of M dashes. And I think there's some sensitivity depending on like what level you're using AI at to knowing that, oh, this is definitely AI generated. And like, if I have AI generate a message for me, like, I literally will go in and replace M dashes with regular dashes to make sure that it doesn't really come off in this AI generated way,
Which
you know?
I have some thoughts about that because I do think that while we can all laugh and say like, haha, that's clearly AI, there's a world where, okay, but if that's the best tool for the job and it can do it quickly, fast,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you know, in a complete way, then it doesn't matter. It's like when Excel came along, I am not sitting there proving that I can add 510 numbers together. I'm sure I can, but we also trust that Excel can do it better, faster. And so, like, I'm not intimidated by that as a professional necessarily. I'm just like, I'm gonna use the best tool for the job. So, M dashes aside, like, I do think there's a world where we can answer the question, like, is the output the best output it can be? Is it the best tool for the job? But like a Slack message with M dash, it's like, okay, that's kind of funny.
Well, it's funny, but something that you told me that stuck with me that a mentor of yours told you echoes here. It's I'm not always responsible for doing the job. I'm responsible for getting the job done.
Yeah.
And we're all responsible now for getting the job done because we basically have the world's best intern. Everyone has that intern at their disposal.
That intern that is enthusiastic for work,
Uh-huh.
that intern that won't say no. Well, actually, that's a
It's
whole
starting
very
to say, okay, maybe we'll save that for next week, but
that's a good segue. Is the guard.
but yeah, like you've got a team now. So if you can't get the job done or do it in a way that holds the quality of the work, I guess that's how evaluation will begin to happen more and more,
Yeah,
in my opinion, at least.
I think that's right. Should I give everybody a tease for one of the pushbacks I got?
Oh, please.
So I'm trying to figure out for an unrelated product that I'm building, how to generate a bunch of synthetic data because I obviously can't use real client data or anything like that.
Sure.
Obviously, never would. But then it's like, okay, well, how do I get realistic looking invoices? How do I get realistic looking purchase documents? The receipt that is smudged because you captured it in Expensify in the rain. And so I went to ChatGPT and I'm working through how to generate 1,000 transaction support documents for training, and it pushed back and said, "Why are you doing this? Are you trying to commit fraud? What's the reason for generating fake invoices?" And I'm like, "No, I just need something to give to an AI to train on, essentially." So we're now starting to get some pushback and some guardrails on use cases.
So,
Which I guess, is good because I don't really want spam and like email sales folks to be like figuring out better ways to like get into my inbox, So like maybe it should have some guardrails.
Yeah. So, technical issues aside, how is you?
so my week was good. I'm going to talk a little bit less about like a specific AI project that I built because we worked on some things, but we're a small team and we're going through this rapid implementation of AI. Like, I would say that my team that I work with is probably more committed to the embracing and the implementation of how do we pull AI into everything we do in a way that doesn't sacrifice quality, probably more than maybe any team that I'm aware of. So that's been really exciting. But there's this question around what makes someone, I don't know, like what's the aptitude for being great at AI, even if you don't know how to use it to begin with. So we have team members of all ages, and it's definitely not an age thing. Shout out to my dad. He's in his 70s and he's implemented Claude into his work. Like he literally, like we sat down for like an hour or two one day and he immediately got it and he's just been pulling it into everything he does. So it's not an age thing, and I think that's really cool because it makes AI so accessible and it helps people who maybe want to be in the workforce for longer, stay competitive. Like I just think it's really interesting. But the questions that we're running into are kind of around like technical aptitude and helping people understand the use case because anyone can write a prompt right now. And like that's what makes AI so approachable. I think the skill set might be the translating of here are my tasks and duties that I do from day to day. How do I use AI? That's kind of what I've been thinking about. And I think like having worked in technology companies, it's a little bit more obvious. It's like, oh, I've seen engineers build these 15 to 100 things that make our lives easier and automate different processes. But when you think about like, I don't know, like more service-based companies and more traditional businesses, I think you see that having happened less over the years. So that's just what I've been thinking about a lot. And so we did like a training on Tuesday, and it was like the basics. It was like, here's everything you need to know. Here's the difference between chat and cowork in Claude. Here's why you would use one or the other. Here's how to navigate the file structure, like if you're working in a folder, and here's what that looks like. And I think that was really good. And I'm just trying to figure out like, what does training and learning and development for teams look like going forward? Because if we can take anyone at any skill set and turn them into an AI wizard, we win as a business. Like to me, that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, the transformation now is not how do I become a better, let's call it like partnership tax expert. It's how can I use the tools out there to deliver more value to my partnership tax clients. And that's a different model than we've historically worked off of. It has been spend some time in a domain, learn some information, grow that information, continue to grow in your knowledge skill set over time. And now it's, hey, how can I do it better, faster? The idea, we're solving more complex problems now.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, I know we were going to talk about our product roadmaps.
Yeah.
I would love to know, like, next week, the following week, what do you want to build? Do you have anything in mind? Or what are you gonna work?
I think today at the startup weekend, I'm focused on just building like tools for me. I'm not joining a team. I'm just working on kind of my own products, but I'm really, really excited about what can be done with AI and like audit tools. So whether it be for tax, whether it be for, insurance, whether it be for law, like taking AI systems and putting them in places where they can enable better, faster deliverables, I think is really interesting. So one of the things I want to try to figure out how to do, there's a company that does like R&D tax credits. R&D tax credits, for those who don't know, are somewhat cumbersome studies and requires marrying up data with projects and putting together narratives that substantiate that, so that if you were to get audited, you would have validation on your credit. And there's no reason in the world why you couldn't just like take Claude co work and say, here's the files with all the W-2s and all the project descriptions and all this, and spit out a report. So I think it's going to be slightly more nuanced than that, but using that as like a template, where else can we do the same format for like property tax filings, sales and use tax, reverse audits, looking for money back, getting credits. Like I think there's just such an incredibly high potential for these tools now to be leveraged to do work that used to be done by the hour by interns, by overseas talent, just working through volume. And I think that those days are gone. So I'm excited for building those things.
Well, we'll check in on our next podcast about how that went for you.
We can call it, what is it? Hashtag build in public.
Build in public. Well,
Watch the podcast and understand how I burned through $8,000 worth of Vercel credits or something.
dude, our bank account's about to look rough.
Yeah, something about preparing for retirement does not
Yeah, I
look
know, we're
like
gonna
dumping
spend
20 grand on an AI tool.
We're a growth household. We don't need to have net income. All right. Um, well, I think so. You and I have talked a lot about my data warehouse that I built, which is I can talk more about that another time. But basically, I want to make all of our data in our services business useful and accessible to our team, to our management, to our board, etc., even to our customers. I don't know. And so we've got a data warehouse. It's
Can I interject for just a second? Because I think people who don't know you would not have any background for this, but you are not classically trained in data analysis. You don't write SQL. You're not a Python pandas person. So you're kind of looking at this with fresh eyes for the first time in this role. And I remember a week ago when you said, "Yeah, I set up Google BigQuery," and I was like,
it's over for
"Oh,
everybody.
everyone is going to be unemployed."
Yeah, like we have a couple of disparate systems that while they have APIs, which makes them a lot easier to interact with like programmatically, they aren't a Salesforce or a HubSpot that have these really well accessible like integrations. And so I was like, how do we pull in that data so that our team can use it better? So I used Claude to basically create some scripts that pull all, like literally all of the data points from the software that we use and from our accounting data into a single data warehouse. And I was like, great, that means the project is done. No, there's like that was like step point 0.5. So the real work now is one, ensuring that that data is structured well. So do the fields in QuickBooks match up with the fields from our CRM system in the way that they should? Does Claude know that those match up in that way? And then the real challenge is building views so that Claude can easily access the types of married data points and just tables that people are going to be querying frequently. And then how, if for someone who has no knowledge of our data, no knowledge of how it's structured, and no knowledge of the names of the data points, if they ask a plain English question about our business, how does Claude know what to return? Or if it's unclear, how does it know what the right questions are to ask? Because I think that that's what will be more powerful. So I've been using skills in Claude, which are like these repeatable processes with a ton of context behind them, um, to organize our data. And so it's like the skill will reference our documentation in Notion, which then will help it query the data warehouse. And I'm adding more and more to that every single day because it's never over. Someone will ask another question that hasn't been asked before, and Claude will be like, I don't know how to tie those things together. And it tries to return something, but it's it's hard because if someone does that and they get an answer back that's like obviously wrong, it damages the credibility of this this project and the work that I've done on it. So I want it to be solidified and I want it to be really good for the end users because if you've ever worked somewhere like I know we've both like interacted with data teams that are just overwhelmed because they're doing that kind of work as human beings. Like maybe they're using AI in some way, but They have so many requests from so many different people with so many different pieces of context that are needed to understand how to pull the right data points that it's like, wow, there's like so much demand and only so many people on these teams. Claude can be that team for this small business that I work at, but we need to make sure that it doesn't degrade its own value by providing back bad answers, you know?
Yeah, and I think, one of the key takeaways I take from that is this is traditionally the domain of FinOps teams, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, all of my small business clients at the first public accounting firm I worked at was they didn't have data teams, they didn't have financial analysts, they didn't have, cloud data operations. And they probably could have really benefited from all of the data that they have. There's some stat, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's like, you know, uh, construction companies are only using like 20% of the data they have access to. And it's like, man, could you imagine if you could improve job profitability by even 10% if you were using all of your data, had understanding of all these things? I think that's where the small businesses really stand to have an outsized benefit from this technology because before you just had all these disparate systems, the data was isolated. Now you can actually stand up a, for lack of a better phrase, FP&A function inside of an organization that would historically never be able to afford, $1 million, data team per year. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And like with all of this said, this is great. Like, cool, I've got a data thing and I can pull information out of it, and Claude is doing its thing. Cool. None of that matters if your data is not clean. Like that is it's actually the pre-work that needs to happen. And so like I've been trying to go before the data warehouse and like scrub and work with the team and make sure it looks good. And that is like the ongoing vegetable eating task. Like cleaning up my data is like eating my vegetables when all I want to do is like go do sales and eat my chocolate cake. That makes all of it valuable and it makes all of it worth it. But that's the next thing. How do I have Claude help me know when the data's wrong?
And I think that's the, if we want to if we want to present the bearish argument on AI, right? Like data teams would tell you spinning up a big query instance is actually not that difficult. Like go buy a subscription, set up a database, like great. Okay, cool. That's not actually that challenging. You or I who've never done that, it's like, oh, that's like downloading PyCharm for the first time and printing hello world. I'm a developer. It's like, no, you're okay, cool. Yes, you technically did the thing, but where's the value? And that's where it will be really interesting to see how much can we rely on AI in the future to do that pre-processing, that cleaning, that validation, to work with a team member's inbox and their Slack channel to understand what this messy data point should be, and then push it into the system so that everyone can get value from it. And that's, I still don't think we know how possible that's going to be, but just seeing the advancements in the last few weeks with OpenClaw and all these context management tools, I'm probably 51% bullish on it.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah, agreed. But to your point too, like spinning up my own BigQuery account, I'm not doing anything new. I am not reinventing the wheel. I'm doing things other people have done before and have definitely done better than I am doing them, me and Claude combined. So if we're doing novel things like that have never been done before, that's fascinating. It's probably not me or you doing them. That'd be really incredible, but it's probably Anthropic and their team developing some new incredible thing in Claude. But how can we do the thing that's been done before better, cheaper, and faster than the people that are currently doing them? And I think like that's to me what I'm trying to keep in the back of my mind as we do all these things.
Yeah.
But well, do you think it's time to wrap up for our first podcast?
We can wrap up. I don't know, did we knock everything out on the list that we wanted to talk about?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we got through it. I'm sure we'll have more. We did even more than we set out to
I
do.
know. I think this was great.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll hope our microphones actually picked up our voices the whole time.
yeah. We can record an outro where we tell people if you want to get in touch with us, leave a like or share your podcast with your friends. If you want to reach us, you can reach us at abc123 at thejoinaccount.com, something like that.
Well, thank you guys for joining us on the joint account, and we'll see you next time.